Hello. I don't know if your brains are all fried from taking in a lot of information for the last 2 days. But I wanted to spend this time kind of looking at some of the goals for this course and discussing, some of those pieces. So we were originally going to break up into groups, but I think we're such a small group. I think we can just have this conversation here. And then I'm just going to take notes and then send them off to all of you. So I guess the first thing I wanted to do is to kind of, sorry, I'm looking at my notes on this other computer, is to compare and contrast the food hub models that we heard about and others that you may know about, and think about, models that may suit the growers that you work with. Some models may suit them better than others, and just have a conversation about that. So we saw a for-profit farmer-owned cooperative. We saw a nonprofit that solely does direct-to-consumer aggregation, which is Big River Farms. And then we saw the Good Acre that's a nonprofit that has, 3 primary sales channels for those farmers. And then we saw Field to Family and I don't know if Michelle spoke a ton about this, but they were just wholesale and then started direct-to-consumer during the pandemic. And that's continuing. And so that was an online market to provide that sales outlet for their farmers during the pandemic, to augment the farmers markets that were closed. So yeah, any thoughts?
You're probably on the same wavelength as I know, like, our farmers that we're working most closely with right now are probably not ready for the bigger for-profit model. And maybe I think definitely, like, people we're working with are, like, a nonprofit food hub, or like connecting with ones that exist is probably going to suit them best, at least right now, because most people we're working directly with are on their first, or definitely under 5 years of growing.
Yeah, I think, based on that experience of, well, a couple of things. Most of the for-profit, or most of the food hubs that I'm aware of in Ohio are for-profit. There's a couple of multi-farm CSA type food hubs in the central Ohio area, and then a couple other that kind of service more wholesale, maybe some direct-to-consumer markets in Southwest and in the Northeast. I think one thing that, though, like, sticks out to me about all of those models is that with one of them, I think, is an example of a grower who kind of had this idea of wanting to work collectively with other growers to market product together and plan together. But most of the other ones are, not to say that they're not doing good work, but that they are a bit more kind of top down, of like, we are a food hub and we're providing this service to farmers, and not so much like a farmer saying, hey, I want to get together with my other, with my community and try to grow food collectively together. So I think that's one thing that I've noticed amongst the groups that we're serving. I think they seem really interested in some of those more like kind of community-based models. Maybe it's even like a micro food hub or something, but some kind of way to do it where it's kind of started. It's not someone coming in and saying, like, here is your market, and we'll like tell you kind of what to grow, or even if it is like a process of working with them. I think the model of, a really like grower community-based grassroots model might be of more interest from what I've heard.
I was really taken with the community-based solutions there with local food that we heard about. Because like I think about the really truly small scale and limited resource beginning farmers, that it's our target audience, and especially that like I see in the really rural communities in Southeast Ohio, that idea of a food hub for a small community isn't like what we think of the bigger food hub. It's not really wholesale, but the ability to work collectively and aggregate your small scale stuff. I don't know, kind of made me start thinking about like redefining food hub. It doesn't have to be or does the size matter to be a real food hub? If you're working collectively, could a smaller food hub in a smaller community work? And I really like that hearing about a non-wholesale food hub model. I'm really like thinking about that, because wholesale is, I mean, it's scary. I mean, it's scary to me as a small scale producer, like it really is. So I liked hearing about other options in a food hub model, that I didn't have to just think food hub wholesale. So, and even the possibility of building a local food system, starting super small, of just aggregating to create a complete farmers market stand, like really thinking from the beginning of small scale. So ideas I just hadn't considered before that I could see possibly working, especially when we are talking about folks that are growing on maybe like less than a quarter acre.
I found it really helpful. I was just gonna say that I found it helpful to see the different models, and like what everyone else has said, we are working with really small scale operations, some of which are just sort of tackling the whole how to grow process, and dealing with this whole how to make your commitment is really scary for many of them. And just really just getting through that, can I grow enough to meet my commitment and have a product that's sellable, that you know is of good quality. I think that as our growers evolve, then having a model of a hub, a food hub that can evolve over time as they evolve would be good.
I was really encouraged by all of the farmer outreach that some of the food hubs were doing, like all the educational programming and assistance. They were taking the time to help the growers be successful to fill the demand for the markets they were helping to establish. I was really impressed with some of the, especially the smaller food hubs and the nonprofits that were going out and spending hundreds of hours a year assisting those farmers. And then if and when extension was needed for something specialized, they brought them in.
Mhm.
But also I think there's a lot of opportunities for us in extension to help those people, especially to reach more. And so that was very encouraging. And I know food hubs are diverse and there's a lot of different things going on, but really when you see food hubs with 2 or 3 major markets being run simultaneously with a lot of even the same growers providing produce, that seemed a little overwhelming to me. I think the groups that we're working with would do well if they wanted to start anew. They would probably need to start with a single market model and maybe build off of that. But I don't see 2 or 3 different marketing models right away being, I think that would just stretch the management too thin potentially.
Mhm.
But some of the bigger food hubs were pretty impressive with how many different markets they were serving.
Well, I think I said this, I think this morning, that in thinking about the financial stability of a food hub, I think regardless of size or setup, if it exists solely to support the farmers and give the farmers a sales outlet, and it's funded from the outside, that's a different thing. But if it does need to be able to generate income, then having that kind of diversification of sales outlets can help do that. Which, if you think about a small diversified farm, if you have just a CSA, for example, as a small grower, but you have a ton, you find yourself with a ton of, I don't know what, a bumper crop of zucchini, which everybody has every year. If you are diversified just for your farm, if you have one wholesale account, one little shop that can take your stuff, that already you're ahead of the game in that regard, because you've got to pick that whether you throw it over your shoulder or pack it, the money, the time and money has been spent. So then I think that what I'm trying to say is I think that diversification of sales outlets for the food hub is similar to that of a small farm, and just having those multiple outlets so that you're not sitting on all this food. So, and then you can, yeah, go ahead.
With that, the hunger relief piece was really interesting, which I don't know if prior to recently how many food hubs were involved with that, but I think that's a really fascinating addition. And with, again, with our audience that we serve more wholly, like outside of A&R, but through the whole 1890 land grant, I do wonder if there's connections in the hunger relief aspect and food hubs that are sustainable financially, and how that might tie in as well.
That's something I spoke to both Steve at the Goodacre and Laura a lot about, and that a lot of that hunger relief, there's a lot of money from COVID for hunger relief, and so that LEAF program was brand new last year, and they've been able to fund it to continue, but it looks like this year and next, there's a lot, or last year and this year, there's a lot of money for hunger relief. And the question is, will that money remain? And so, building out a whole program based on it, if the funding isn't there, then you're left with an unsustainable system. But I think that in thinking about, community organizations, these keeping it hyper local, and whether it's county or town, if you have investment from, your immediate local area, to help fund hunger relief programs and tie that in with your local farmers, I feel like that's where some of that sustainability could come in for the long term. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, related to that, or on that note, Columbus just 2 years ago, the city of Columbus, in partnership with Kroger, started supporting more of that kind of, it sounds pretty similar to the LEAF program in terms of like increasing the ability of local produce to come to communities that are food insecure. And so they pay farmers, so they subsidize the cost for farmers to participate in it, so that they can still get kind of that retail price. And then they also pay community organizations that are neighborhood based, who are doing the distribution of either a box program or like a market stand or something of the produce. And they, I think, have recruited, they have 12 BIPOC farmers who are supplying the produce for that program. So they're really trying to emphasize not just serving Black communities, but also having the producers be people of color as well.
So that's great. How far are you all? Oh, you guys are all over the state. Never mind. I was going to say, how far are you all from Columbus? But you're all over the place. So
yeah, I live in Columbus. I think I'm the only, yeah.
Well, and Ohio is unique, Sarah, because we have 3 major metropolitan areas that literally diagonally go across the state. So the access to a metro area is pretty good when you consider parts of Minnesota, which get rather remote from a population center. We think we are, but not in Minnesota terms. I think the one thing for our audiences with the food hub is the farmer control piece, which I was very intrigued with the ones that were more farmer driven, because Sarah, I know you have some Amish up in your area, but Ohio has the largest Amish population of any state. Oh. And the Amish market a lot with their aggregation centers being produce auctions. But those are not a stable revenue source as far as price, because depending on what else comes to the auction, you might not get as good a price. And there's a lot of, it's an auction, so there's a lot of other things that go on. And you don't go to the auction knowing what your price is going to be until your produce is actually sold, which for A small farmer and even a beginning farmer can be kind of volatile way of doing marketing. So to me, the intriguing part of the food hub is the idea that you can have something that's more farmer driven to produce that stability and to help them with their marketing plans to try to have a more stable outsourcing rather than something like a produce auction for aggregation.
There are a lot of cooperative food hubs in this country, very small ones, very big ones. I will put together a list of them, of the ones that I'm aware of, at least. There are a lot of them. There are some just starting. We have one, Shared Ground Farmers Co-op, just I think that Steve mentioned, that's, I think it's like 6 farms. And they're kind of phasing out. We thought about bringing them in for this, but they're kind of on their way out. But it's, I think, 6 farmers, and they're selling, you know, they do a CSA, and they're selling some wholesale to local food co-ops. Minneapolis is a special case. We have a huge local food economy here, and it's really well supported. So you can just go to a food co-op and sell your product there. But I'm going to send out a list of food hub co-ops, and they really do. I mean, they cover. I mean, there's one that I know of in northern Wisconsin that's 3 farms. And that's it, and they're selling direct to consumer. And so there are a lot of ways to do it. But I'll put together a list of kind of a variety of them. Some that are just starting this year, some that have been in place for 15 years, lots of different models. And, you know, people are always, in the farming world, you know, everybody's happy to share their information, which is really nice. So.
Do these,
Go ahead, sorry.
do you know if any of these food co-ops also share resources like tractors and other stuff that might be helpful? I mean, if they've already got a connection to the food hub, do they also share like stuff?
You know, I don't know of any that do, but I feel like there probably are, because that makes a lot of sense to have that. So I don't know, but I will see what I can find. I know there are equipment shares. Sorry, it's a little loud here. There are equipment shares that you know, groups of farmers have, but I don't know off the top of my head any, you know, any that are connected to that sales. You know, a food hub as a sales outlet is basically what that is: a sales outlet, an aggregator, a marketing arm for these farmers. But I feel like almost everything is out there, so there might be. But I'll see what I can find. And I think that we've touched on this a little bit, but the second piece is kind of talking about current needs. So based on what, you know, we went through in the last 2 days, what we learned, analyzing current needs for continuing farmer, manager, and buyer education. And I know this is pretty early for some of that, but certainly thinking about analyzing the current needs for farmer education in regards to setting them up for sales, whether it's to farmers markets or, you know, small grocery or a food hub. What are thoughts on that for what farmers need at this point to find somewhere to sell their product, basically?
I think they need like a cold storage solution in a packing area.
Where are Michelle?
Absolutely, I agree with that 100%. It's a lot of small farmers just don't have enough refrigeration space to store their stuff.
Okay.
You were gonna ask a question, you said where, and then it got cut off.
Oh, yeah, Michelle, I was wondering, or I guess for all of you, for the farmers that you're working with, what type of infrastructure do they have available to them at all? I mean, is there anything? Is there, you know, a building? Is there a tent? I mean, where are they washing their produce now? If they're growing produce, it's going somewhere maybe, or maybe it's just going into their kitchen as they're learning. But where are they washing their produce? In their driveway, maybe.
We at the with our beginning farmer program, we have a host site that has like a small incubator farm on site, and so we just have a really simple tent, pop-up tent, spray table, pack tables, and then we have a cold store, actually a trailer that has cold store or that has a cool bot in
Okay.
it. So it's pretty simple but effective. And I mean, I have a bit of a different perspective on this because I managed a farm for 5 years where we didn't have cold storage. And I think cold storage can be useful, but it can also be sometimes not necessary with like what am I trying to say? I think with certain planning or kind of like logistics in mind, you can, and especially if you're an urban farm and you're delivering to customers within like, I don't know, a mile of your farm. A lot of times I think you can make it work without cold storage. But it just, I think maybe requires a bit more kind of like planning and kind of crop planning support.
I think it can be done, but I think like it makes it a lot easier for farmers who have other full-time jobs to harvest when they can and then store it, as opposed to, or like, it can be a real pain to harvest either like right before market or right before you do a delivery, just from a logistical standpoint of what you're doing with the rest of your life. But I do understand. Yeah, I think you make a good point that like identifying which farmers actually need it is important.
In thinking about what Annalisa said about, working funding into grants for, for some of these things for participants in your programs, or I know BFRDP has some, they've got some money for those very things, at least in their additional COVID funding they did. But I lost my train of thought. Providing those. Oh, is there an possibility of, so Dana, if you're in, you're in an urban environment, is there a possibility of setting up some type of, getting funding basically to have a shared facility, which I know is what a lot of the Goodacre, when they started, I mean, you're seeing them now, but when they started, it was very different. They had a pile of money and didn't know what to do with it. And they built out this big facility, and then, they were offering storage rental for farmers. And as Kazua said, she was using their facility for washing her produce. And but I wonder about something that's a shared space for farmers for storage and washing.
I
We
think
have
one
a
of the things,
farmer who's trying to start that, but she needs funding. Lisa Helm, Cindy, is like trying to get money to finish their little community pack shed. But I think there's been others, and but we have people interested in doing that, but not here yet.
as an extension, I think one of the things that we're finding is, so Central State just became an 1890 extension program. Really, we've only been doing things for 4 years. And so in the underserved, underrepresented population, there's been a few people doing some things, but there hasn't been a lot of coordination and a lot of networking. And I think what we're finding is we have folks that have been doing things, but they've been kind of doing it on their own. And, I applaud them for all the things that they have done. And then as we're starting to do programming, we find a whole bunch of other people who are interested. And so we kind of have this gap of knowledge, because it really, like Dana and Mark are finding out, it's brand new. It's not a lot of people with a lot of experience, but an incredible amount of enthusiasm. And so for us, it's managing how can we create some of these networks to work with folks that are more advanced, but then also to bring along people that are wanting to become more involved, and how can we help empower those interested in creating this local food system within these food deserts, and how can we help that organization? That's why in some ways grants, we're able to coordinate some, but even getting people enough organized, so maybe there is like a nonprofit or somebody that can take on the grant administration, sometimes can be an issue to find in a community that wants to do something, but then you kind of have to have that person or organization that's like, okay, we'll take the administration of the grant on if you help with this piece. So a lot of our work right now is kind of creating those networks and finding the people that we can have work together toward what everyone wants to do. You know, it's been an interesting ride because the educators, I think Sarah, you and I talked, they've just been on since October. So this has been a whirlwind.
Mhm. Yeah.
Happening. We're almost to a year, everybody.
Wow. Well, you know, I think that looking to Iowa almost as a model for some of that, they're doing the entire food world in Iowa seems to be super well connected through extension. As far as I can tell, there's this, they also have this statewide food farm to school initiative. But you know, there's Kayla Cater, who was brought up yesterday. She's an extension agent, and she's the one who coordinated this this food hub managers working group. And there are all these, and not just the food hub world, but a number of different other parts of local food systems are connected through extension in Iowa. And I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know, you know, it's not, I don't think in an official way, but I will see. It's just, it's hard, right?
And we do have that because we have Ohio State, and they have created some systems, but we're working with a population that maybe fell through the cracks of some of those local food initiatives. Because some of them happen in some more affluent communities, places where people have more access to resources. And so we're kind of coming in to how can we work with those groups of people who maybe don't have those resources that were already created in it. So there are local food systems that exist in Ohio. We're just working with the ones that are more in the food deserts, with the folks that haven't been able to access some of those local food systems that do exist. And I guess I have a question for the group. You know, now that you've kind of sat through this food hub training, are there some things that maybe were touched on that you wish you could have gotten more information about, or maybe some topics that didn't get addressed that you think would be, you know, kind of a next step for us to think about as we looked at food hubs and you know, cooperative selling and some of those things?
Do you think that Central State could maybe pay for some subscriptions to some of these inventory management softwares and things that we talked about, like the technologies, so we could get practice actually playing around with them? So when we talk to people about them, we actually have an idea of what we're doing. Because, like, you know, seeing the pictures, seeing them do things is like, it's good, but like, I don't have any idea how that actually works on a practical sense.
You mean some of the things that were shown on inventory management and things like that, Mark?
Yeah, from yesterday's session.
I think it takes a long time to really understand how to be an admin for one of these local food. This one was called the local food management.
Local food marketplace. Yeah.
Marketplace. Yeah. One of the things that I would like to say is I think that facilitating or starting this conversation up with growers, not just beginning growers, but some more seasoned growers, because I feel like some of these hubs need some seasoned growers to help make sure that their model and their goals are met. Sometimes beginning growers are, I don't know, and just to make sure that the door is open so that if you have growers in the community that want to serve the food system locally, even if they aren't, let's say, our target audience, but they want to collaborate and work with and mentor and be involved in. I think that would help achieve some of the goals. But I feel like being able to initiate these conversations with growers, that's like lead a workshop and get people talking and getting them to sort of own the opportunity, but being there to sort of help push things forward. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all, but that's just some thoughts.
One other, oh, did I?
You can go ahead, Dana. I'll remember my thought.
Okay. I was just going to say, I think one other thing that would be nice to hear a bit more about is the like starting a food hub. So like from the beginning, I think we heard about kind of some organizations that are a little bit more established, and so like hearing in a little bit more detail about what that process is, and maybe it's with something that we could do with some of the Ohio-based food hubs that exist or something too as well. The other thing I was thinking is just getting to know some of the hubs in Ohio a bit better might, some of them will probably not be the right fit for some of the growers we work with that, some require GAP certification, which is probably a pretty big barrier. But I like that idea of, being able to be a convener for some of the hubs around the state, because then as we have individuals who are interested in creating similar models, we'll already have maybe that community of practice that they can learn from some of those other models who are a little bit further along, and can have potential mentors, which it seems like from the people I've spoken with, everyone's pretty as Sarah mentioned, everyone likes sharing in the local food world. So
I think it would be good. Sorry, Mark, do you want to go ahead?
I wanted to quick touch on Dana's point, because so my old boss helped start the local roots. I don't know if that cut me off or not. I'm driving. But my old boss helped start the local roots, sort of like, it's like a co-op grocery, but it's kind of a food hub. They do some aggregation. Like, I could ask her if she just wants to come to one of our morning meetings and talk, like, or things like that. Just that's an Ohio thing. That's just I wanted to mention it before I forget about it.
Yeah, we can follow up on that, Mark. How about we talk?
My thought, well, one, Dana kind of captured one of my thoughts too, that like, how do you create a food hub? How do you recruit people to participate in a food hub from the get-go? Definitely something that would be helpful. And I think in general, like as we talk about our audience of beginning farmers, the story of how do you get started is really important in whatever it is, because if we just talk about the folks that have been doing it really successfully and what they're doing now, you're like, that's awesome. I don't know if I can ever get there. How do I actually get started? And that's just like in life in general. But I know the Farm to School Network for Ohio is working with food hubs right now and looking at food hubs as a method to get more local food into schools. So there is kind of a convening of food hubs in the works with that effort as well. As just an FYI to everybody. I know Logan and I have been involved in that conversation. And that farm to school network is led by Ohio State. And then the thought that I had that would be helpful for continued learning, now that we've kind of had this like big overview of things and great ideas, I almost feel like we need to do a simulation. Like, hi, I'm Denise and I grow like green beans and radishes. And I want to be part of the food hub. And like to go through the process. And as I'm sitting here, I'm like, we could create a board game or a video game simulation of this whole thing. And you could, you know, pick what crops you want to grow and who your buyers are, and, you know, how do I go through that entire process of working with a grower when we talk about, you know, how many seeds do we need to buy, and planting schedules and projections. You know, it was all touched on, but actually just take a crop, or take like a pretend farm or real farm, and like just go through that. What would it look like for like that one farmer to go through the process as part of the food hub, from planning and growing and harvesting and selling and all that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that would be really helpful for all of us. And the other thing that I think would be helpful is to sort of figure out some of the details of, like, because some of these to get them started, grants may be essential. Bigger collaborating organizations than maybe the partners that we have for our food hubs and for our incubator farms, just because, you know, we need somebody who's going to coordinate this whole thing and manage it, and then you need somebody who's going to do the whole picking up the food. And, you know, even if all the food is grown in at the incubator farm right now, at some point these growers move on and they'll probably still want to, you know, be involved in the food hub, you know, that whole logistics. So what kind of infrastructure do you need? How much time is going to be involved from all different aspects? I mean, I don't know. I know every hub would be different, but sort of figuring out the bare bones and where you start, I think it's just really important. And if you haven't done it, then it's hard to really know how to plan it.
So would it be beneficial to have some food hubs who are maybe only, you know, still early, like 2 or 3 years into their evolution, to kind of do their source story with us on how they got going and how it became organized, and, you know, what resources were needed to actually get it up and going? Would that be something helpful?
Do you know if this discussion has taken place among farmer groups and around the state? Is this something that people are talking about?
I can speak a bit to that. I've certainly heard. Michelle, are you asking, like, is there interest amongst farmers in having more food hubs?
I'm sure there's interest, but there's a difference between having individual interest and a group of people getting together and say, okay, we need to talk about this as a group and figure this out if we're going to do it. Do you know if those groups that have taken the leap and sort of, you know, it's kind of the same group that decides that they want to start a farmer's market. You need sort of a collective of people that are interested in doing this, but maybe are at the very beginning stages.
There's a network of urban growers in Columbus that I was working with that just applied for an Urban Ag Innovation Program grant to create a shared apprenticeship program and labor model. So it's not quite a food hub in the marketing sense, at least at this point, but more in a shared labor sense. So that, you know, that's a group that's that's kind of organizing. And I think many of those members are also involved in that farm share program I mentioned that is doing the like subsidized boxes for low-income communities in Columbus.
So Agraria has submitted a grant for Southwest Ohio to look at a regional food system for Southwest Ohio. So Agraria is working with the Black Farming Network. And so this is kind of an offshoot of some of that to try to create a network. And I think, Michelle, you kind of hit on something that because there's not really been an organization that's helped to network some of the minority farmers and limited resource farmers together. I'll be interested to see how once the farmers start working with each other more, that we might be able to have a group that forms that would be able then to take it on. Because within the pockets of folks that we have doing urban agriculture, there's been some very organized in a community, then you move to other communities and there's not much organization. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we can help facilitate maybe some networking among farmers, and then a group organically will grow that could do that. I think there's a lot of outside people that would like to see that happen, because actually most farmers markets are not run by farmers. They're run by a town, they're run by a village, they're run by a group of people who are consumers who are not farmers themselves that are holding the farmers market. So it's actually not anything that you really have the grassroots farmers running farmers markets. So to me, the idea of farmers being the instruments for this food hub is kind of exciting, because I think it will empower more farmers that way.
I know this isn't food, but Mark, the Cut Flower Collective that you're working with, is it kind of like a Cut Flower hub?
The Cut Flower Collective is its own thing, but a lot of members of that group have somebody's been developing. They're in the beginning stages of developing, basically it's like a flower hub. Yeah. Where they actually do wholesale sales first thing in the morning. So they have a central location. The farmer members bring in their stuff. The florists come, they pick things up, they leave, then they open it to retail sales after that. So yeah, they're basically doing the same thing and trying to develop it, but for flowers instead of food.
Are there grants out there that would help, provide the initial startup funds for figuring this out?
There are some planning grants for local food promotion or farmers market promotion, or the two USDA programs that they have a broader class than they don't just cover farmers markets. So some of those things could cover planning costs, feasibility studies, things like that. I think those kinds of programs, and what's hard to find in general, is funding to cover infrastructure, right? The space, the physical space that would be your hub, or transportation, investment, things like that. So, but with the feasibility study, it might be easier to secure funding. So.
In Northwest Ohio, the AIF farm had a hub. I think it was started by the Maumee Valley growers, but I think they just grew too quickly and it overwhelmed the growers, and then the growers don't want to do it anymore. It was too big, too fast. So it dissolved.
I don't have a comment on that, but I have to skedaddle. I will see you all in a couple weeks.
Have a good vacation, Mark.
Thank you. Bye.
I'm wondering, so I know that in Wisconsin, at least, they have a huge history of cooperative farming, and they have at Madison, they have, a whole section of extension folks who work on cooperative farm systems. Does anything like that exist in Ohio? Okay.
Yeah, OSU has a Center for Cooperatives that does work with some. So the cooperative that I was involved with up in Mansfield was kind of supported initially in development by some of the folks at that center. And they do a really good job with like kind of co-op development work. So are a good resource.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that you all want to digest or talk about after this? Or is there anything else, Cindy, that you want to make sure to discuss?
Well, I think this has been good feedback, because the one thing that I wanted to get was what you guys see as some next steps that would be helpful for you all, because as extension, of course, we can't build this food hub, but what we hope to do is to facilitate the process so that we can help the farmers connect with each other. We can help facilitate the groups that do want to create the food hub and help them with that process. So that's what I kind of see as our next steps is, what tools do you guys think that you need that you would be able to provide that assistance, facilitation, and support for those groups to take on that endeavor. And that's what I think. Thank you, Sarah, for Moses, for putting this together and kind of helping us begin this conversation as we start to work with folks and how we can help them create some of these, a food hub or cooperative, whatever works best for that group of farmers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope it was helpful. I'm hearing in this conversation that maybe we went too big. So if I had it to read it, it would be different, obviously, hearing this feedback. But I do hope that it was of value. So, and again,
It was valuable.
okay, good. And again, I'm putting together, I've been taking notes as things that people seemed particularly interested in over the last 2 days, and we'll be reaching out to all of our presenters and ask them to send me more stuff. So I'm just going to send you a bunch more things probably next week. And then I'm also have an email ready to go that I'll be sending out to all of you, and as soon as we're done here with the evaluation, and then also asking that same question. So if there's anything else that you think of that you wanted from these presenters, just put it in an email to me and I can get that. But I think that they'd all be perfectly happy to, speak to any of you or help any of you out with anything moving forward too. And I think Sarah Lloyd, she also works for the Center for Integrated Agriculture Systems at Madison. She's done a lot of food systems work, and I think she could be a really nice resource, especially from that cooperative angle. They weren't as big as, when they started, they were a lot smaller, of course. So, yeah.
So Sarah, I think you did a great job and you didn't go too big. I think you gave us these like amazing examples, and now we're like, all right, we can't do that immediately. So now we need resources on where to start. So you did a great job. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you all. It's been fun. I mean, I learned a lot. And it's been nice to meet you all, and good luck on your journey. And then also, Cindy, I'll be sending you this. Once I've edited the recording, I'll be sending this all along to you.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
So, great. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
This was
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
It was really good. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you all.